Have you ever felt that your prayers seem to echo in the void, as if God were distant, unresponsive? If so, you are not alone. Many chosen ones go through this period of divine silence and end up asking themselves, have I been deceived? Is God really listening? This feeling of spiritual abandonment can be devastating, and today I want to show you what's really going on behind it. 1. The feeling of spiritual abandonment. In the Bible, we see several examples of men and women of God who faced long periods of silence. Job, a righteous man, lost everything overnight and cried out to the Lord without receiving an immediate answer. David, an anointed king, wrote entire psalms expressing his anguish, asking why God seemed distant. Even Jesus on the cross exclaimed, my God, why have you forsaken me?" If even those closest to God went through this, why would it be any different for you? God's silence does not mean absence. Many times, He is working behind the scenes, molding you into something greater. Think of a teacher during a test. He doesn't speak, he doesn't give tips, but he's there watching your every step. This silence can be a test, a preparation, a time when your faith is being refined. Have you ever felt that, after a period of difficulty, something great happened in your life? God may be preparing just that for you right now, but there is something even deeper that few talk about. The enemy wants you to believe that you have been abandoned. He wants to plant doubts in your mind, wants you to think that your prayers don't make a difference. Has this ever happened to you? That subtle voice that says, God doesn't care about you. Look how difficult your life is. If He loved you, He would have answered you already. This is the direct attack against your faith. And do you know why? Because when a chosen one persists in faith, even in silence, he becomes a threat to the kingdom of darkness. Now, stop for a moment and reflect. How many times have you prayed and apparently nothing happened? But then, looking back, did you realize that God was moving pieces into something bigger? God's delay is never rejection. It is just a time of preparation. And here comes a powerful secret. Genuine faith grows in waiting. What differentiates a chosen one from someone ordinary is their ability to trust, even when there are no visible signs. So, if you are going through a spiritual desert, don't give up. Keep praying, keep seeking. Your answer may be closer than you think. And you've come this far, it's because something inside you felt like you needed to hear this message. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe it's the answer you've been looking for so long. What if I told you that none of this is by chance? That there is a reason you found this video today? So this word touched your heart. If you feel like you need to understand more about what is happening in your life, I invite you to be part of this journey. Subscribe to the channel now, because here we reveal truths that few have the courage to speak. But I need to warn you, once you discover the truth, there is no going back. Are you ready? 2. The danger of believing spiritual lies. What if I told you that maybe everything you've believed up until now about your prayers not being answered could be a big spiritual trap? Many people go through life carrying a feeling of abandonment, as if God had forgotten about them. If God doesn't answer, it's because He has abandoned me. Has this thought ever crossed your mind? If so, know that this may be one of the biggest spiritual lies there is. A lie that, if not combated, can completely undermine your faith and divert you from your true purpose. From an early age, those chosen go through more intense trials than most. There are moments when everything seems to go wrong, when doors close, and loneliness becomes your only company. In those moments, doubt begins to whisper in your ear, maybe I'm not as special as I thought. But what if I told you that this doubt does not come from God? It can be a direct attack on your spiritual identity. The enemy knows that a chosen one strengthened in faith is a threat. Therefore, one of the most effective strategies against the chosen ones is to plant lies in their hearts. He wants you to believe that you are forgotten, that your prayers are worthless, and that God doesn't care about you. But that's not the truth. If God still allows you to be here, facing challenges, it is because He has something much greater in store for you. God's silence does not mean absence. On the contrary, it is often a sign that He is working behind the scenes. Moses spent years in the desert before being called. Joseph was sold into slavery and imprisoned before becoming governor. David fled for a long time before taking the throne. They all went through moments of silence and trial. What if God had abandoned them in those moments? What if they had given up because they believed the lie that they weren't special? Their purpose would have been interrupted. And now I ask you, will you allow doubt to interrupt yours? If your prayers don't seem to be being answered, perhaps it's because you're looking in the wrong direction. Instead of asking, "Why doesn't God answer me?" start asking yourself, "What is God trying to teach me with this silence?" Often the answer doesn't come the way we expect, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. God works in mysterious ways, and his silence can be a preparation for something much greater. But to see this, you need to remain firm in faith. And here's a powerful truth. The closer you are to discovering your purpose, the stronger the attacks against you will be. The enemy wants to divert your attention, wants to make you give up before achieving what God has for your life. But if you are going through moments of trial, this could be a sign that you are very close to your victory. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like your prayers were being ignored? Have you ever found yourself doubting your calling? Comment below, "I am chosen," if you feel like this word spoke to you. Your story can empower others who are going through the same thing. Let's overcome these spiritual lies together and remain firm in the purpose that God has for us. 3. Why does God allow silence? God's silence can be one of the most distressing moments in a chosen one's journey. You pray, cry, seek answers, and nothing seems to happen. But does this silence mean abandonment? Or is there a much greater purpose behind it? Pay attention, because what I'm going to reveal to you now can completely change your perspective on these moments of apparent spiritual emptiness. Imagine a teacher during a test. During classes, he explains, guides, answers all questions, but when the moment of testing arrives, he remains silent. He needs to see if the student really learned, if he trusts the knowledge he received. So is God. He is not absent. He has not forgotten you, but he is allowing you to pass the test of faith. Whoever truly trusts in him remains firm, even when the sky seems to be silent. And you, chosen one, need to understand something crucial. God does not waste pain. Silence can be the space you need to shape your strength, your resistance. Maybe he is preparing something much bigger than you imagine, something you are not yet ready to receive. Sometimes waiting is the answer. How many times have you ordered something, and after a while realized that if you had received it when you wanted it, it wouldn't have been as good as you imagined? God sees the whole picture. While you only see the now, he already knows about tomorrow. His silence does not mean that he is not acting, but rather that he is organizing everything for the perfect time. And there's more. There are times when God remains silent because he has already given you the answer, but you are waiting for another one that fits what you want to hear. God does not change his will to please us. He is sovereign and knows what is best for us. The problem is that we often want a yes when he has already said no. We want an easy path when he has already indicated that the road is narrow. Have you ever stopped to think that God's silence could be the answer? If he doesn't answer you to move on, maybe it's because you should wait. If he doesn't open the door, maybe it's because it's not the right way. How many times do we insist on something that, up front, we see was not for us? The chosen ones go through deeper silences because they also have higher callings. If God has called you to something great, he also needs to prepare you. And preparation involves moments of solitude, waiting, silence. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before leading his people. Joseph was sold by his brothers and spent years in prison before becoming governor of Egypt. Even Jesus spent 40 days in the desert before beginning his ministry. If God allowed them to experience silence, why would it be any different for you? So today, if you feel that God is not speaking, remember that he never stopped acting. Trust in his timing. Keep praying, keep seeking, but most of all, keep believing. God's silence is a test, but it is also a preparation. The answer will come at the right time. Now tell me here in the comments, have you ever experienced a moment when God seemed to be silent? What was that experience like for you? Share with me, because I really want to know your story. 4. The hidden spiritual danger. If you feel like God isn't listening to you, be very careful, because this could be a sign that something big is about to happen. But here's the danger. In that moment of silence, when answers seem distant and despair begins to grow, the enemy takes advantage. He acts sneakily, placing doubts in your mind, making you question your faith, your identity, and even the purpose that God has for you. Have you ever noticed that just when you are about to take a big step, when you are closer to your victory, the spiritual attacks intensify? This is no coincidence. The enemy knows your potential. He recognizes the strength of the chosen one and therefore tries to weaken you with lies, feelings of abandonment, and even spiritual fatigue. The truth is that those chosen will always be targets. Since childhood, many have faced persecution, injustice, and trials that others around them never understood. And you, who are reading this now, know what I'm talking about. How many times have you felt like your life has a greater weight? How many times have you looked around and realized that your journey has always been more difficult than others? And yet, even in so much pain, there is something inside you that won't let you give up. Do you know what this is? It's the purpose. When God chooses someone for a special mission, He allows bigger battles because He is preparing you for something great. But now, I need you to understand a powerful spiritual secret. The enemy does not waste time on those who are worthless. If you are going through intense trials, if you feel that your prayers are not answered, and if your faith has been tested to the limit, know that this is proof that you are chosen. God's silence is not rejection, it is training. It is at this moment that He observes how far you are willing to trust, even without seeing it. Because the chosen live by faith, not by what they feel, not by what they see, but by what they believe. And this is where many fall into the enemy's trap. He plants thoughts like, God has abandoned you, you are not that special, maybe this is all in your head. He uses people close to you to discourage you, creates situations that seem impossible to resolve, and makes you feel like you are alone. But today I'm here to open your eyes. If you're going through this, don't despair. Don't be fooled, because the darkness always grows most intense before dawn. Silence always comes before God speaks. Something powerful. The desert always precedes the promised land. So I ask you, will you let the enemy convince you that you are not chosen? Will you allow doubt to steal your promise? Or will you resist and trust? Even if you don't understand everything right now, I want you to write in the comments, I choose to trust God even in silence, because this statement has power. The spiritual world responds to your faith, and if you're reading this now, it's no coincidence. God wants to remind you that He never abandoned you, that this battle is not the end and that your answer is coming. Stay strong, because something great is about to happen in your life. If you have ever experienced moments like this, where it seems like God was silent, share your experience in the comments. How it was, what did you learn? Your testimony can strengthen the faith of someone else who is facing this same process right now. And don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message, because the chosen ones always recognize each other and become stronger together. 5. How to overcome God's silence. When God's silence seems deafening, many begin to question their faith. But is this silence really an absence, or is God speaking in another way? Often we are so focused on receiving an audible, clear, and immediate response that we miss the small signs He sends us daily. These signs can be in the coincidences that surround us, in the words of a stranger, in a verse that appears at the right time, or even in the resistance we feel when following a wrong path. God does not abandon us. If He seems silent, perhaps it is because He is teaching us to trust, to grow in faith, to learn to walk without needing constant confirmation. It is exactly in these moments that persistence in prayer becomes fundamental. Not because God needs to be convinced to answer us, but because we need to shape our hearts to be in tune with His will. Continuous prayer, even without immediate answers, is a test of faith. Remember, Daniel prayed for 21 days before the angel brought his answer, and the reason for the delay was not divine inattention, but a spiritual battle in heaven. Could it be that your response has already been sent and is just being delayed by forces you can't even imagine? If you've been through this, share your experience in the comments, as your story can strengthen others. In addition to prayer, looking for signs in everyday details is a powerful practice for those who feel forgotten by God. Sometimes He responds in unexpected ways. It can be an inexplicable feeling of peace even in the midst of chaos, an opportunity that appears out of nowhere, a person who appears with words that touch exactly on your pain. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever noticed something like this and only later understood that it was a message from God? If so, comment, I've seen the signs, and strengthen the faith of those who need it. Another essential point to overcome God's silence is to read and meditate on the Word. The Bible is alive, and through it, God speaks directly to each of us. Often the answer we seek so much was already written centuries ago, just waiting for us to open our eyes to see it. If Jesus, even though He was the Son of God, faced moments of divine silence, like in the Garden of Gethsemane, Who are we not to go through this too? But one thing is certain, God's silence is never empty. It is a preparation, a call for us to trust more. Have you ever had the experience of finding an answer just when you unintentionally opened the Bible? If so, share it in the comments with, "The Word answered me." Finally, one of the most effective strategies for overcoming this phase is to surround yourself with people who strengthen your spirituality. Isolation weakens us, makes us doubt, and makes us easy prey for negative thoughts. But when we are surrounded by people of faith who have already gone through trials and won, our hope is renewed. How many times has a simple piece of advice, a prayer from a friend, or even a testimony from someone changed your perspective? If you have ever been strengthened by someone else in a moment of God's silence, leave an "I have been strengthened" in the comments to inspire those reading. The journey of faith will not always be made up of immediate answers, but one thing is certain: the chosen ones never walk alone. Each silence is a preparation. Each delay is a time of maturation. Each prayer not answered in the expected way may be being answered in a much greater way than we imagine. Do not despair in the silence, because God is working where our eyes cannot see. Have you ever felt this? Have you ever gone through a time of silence and then saw that God was acting? Share in the comments, as your experience could be the word of encouragement someone needs today. 6. The final revelation: you are being groomed. What if, instead of being ignored, you were being prepared for something you couldn't even imagine? What if everything that is happening right now was just a process to strengthen you for something much greater? We often look at God's silence as if it were an absence, a divine indifference, but the truth can be completely different. Remember the story of Joseph, who was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned. For years, he might have thought that God had abandoned him, but each of these painful moments was in reality a piece of the puzzle that would lead him to become ruler of Egypt. God was molding his character, teaching patience, resilience, and unshakable faith. When the time was right, Joseph was prepared for the mission that God had assigned to him. Now stop and reflect. Is this period of waiting and silence not building in you the necessary strength to endure the blessing that lies ahead? Because you see, many people ask for miracles, but few are prepared to receive them. A blessing without preparation can become a burden. If God gave you everything you asked for today, would you be ready to manage? Would I have the spiritual and emotional maturity to deal with this? Maybe that's why you feel like your prayers aren't being answered. Not because God doesn't want to bless you, but because He is waiting for the right moment when you are ready to carry out this mission. God does not waste purposes. He doesn't hand something powerful to someone who isn't yet ready to handle it. Therefore, silence can be the greatest sign that He is preparing you for something much greater. And this happens to all those who are chosen. Have you ever noticed how the lives of the chosen ones are never easy? There are always challenges, periods of isolation, times when it feels like no one understands what you're going through. But it is precisely in this process that God strengthens you, because the chosen cannot be ordinary. Those chosen need to be prepared to carry something bigger. Many ask, but why me? Why does my life have to be so difficult? The answer is simple: because you have a different calling. Anyone who receives a special mission needs to undergo special training. No great leader was forged in comfort. No warrior becomes strong without battles. No soul grows without challenges. So instead of asking, why me? Start asking, what for? What is the purpose behind all this? What is God trying to teach? If today your life seems to be at a standstill, if the doors aren't opening, if your prayers don't seem to be being heard, take a deep breath. It doesn't mean that God has forgotten you. It means He is shaping you. It's preparing you. Because when the right time comes, nothing and no one can stop what He has for you. If this revelation moved you, then it needs watch the next video. There are truths about the chosen ones that few know, and if you ignore this, you could be falling into a spiritual trap without even realizing it. Click now in the next video and find out what's really going on behind the scenes spiritually before it's too late. Don't let this answer slip away. Your purpose may depend on it.